This episode of the Sustainable Brown Girl radio show is sponsored by New Leaf Community Garden. Located at 32 Southbide Avenue, our purpose is to educate, feed, and nourish the people of Newnan through a sustainable community garden. We always welcome extra hands in the garden and can accommodate large volunteer groups. Plus, we have raised beds available for lease for beginner and experienced gardeners. Join us on most Saturdays between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. at 32 Southbide Avenue or visit our New Leaf Community Garden Facebook page to learn more. Hello, and thanks for tuning in to Sustainable Brown Girl on WQEE 99.1, right here in Newnan. I'm your host, Ariel Green. This show exists to provide representation for women of color in the environmental space, to highlight their stories, and to educate the masses about how to be more eco-friendly every day. Tomorrow is Earth Day, the day in which we do our best to make eco-friendly choices, to clean up our planet, and just to enjoy nature and all of the beautiful things that Mother Earth has to offer. So if you want to get involved with some Earth Day activities, one thing that I will be doing on Earth Day is participating in a cleanup with Keep Newnan Beautiful. So that's taking place on Friday, April 22nd. They have two times, one at 9 a.m. and then the other at 1 p.m. I will be at the one at 1 p.m. You can register on keepnewnanbeautiful.org. Space is limited, so you do need to RSVP. But I think it'll be a good time just to participate with our fellow Noonanites and clean up our area. Another thing going on this weekend with Keep Newnan Beautiful is the electronics recycling. Again, go to keepnewnanbeautiful.org to learn more about that. But electronics are so difficult to recycle. So this is a great time to gather all of your old phones, your old electronics, and recycle them in a way that you know it's not going to end up in a landfill and leak toxins into our beautiful earth. So again, go to keepnewnanbeautiful.org to either sign up for the cleanup on April 22nd or to learn more about the electronics recycling on April 23rd. In honor of Earth Day and to show my appreciation for Keep Newnan Beautiful and all that Page does to Keep Newnan Beautiful, I'm resharing this interview that we did a couple of months ago because I think it's so important for us to, know more about what's available in Newnan for those of us trying to be more conscious about our waste. So without further ado, here is the interview with Page Beckwith from Keep Newnan Beautiful.
Thanks so much for having me, Ariel. I was really excited to get a chance to talk to you and all of your viewers and listeners out there.
Yes. So, when I've been living in Newnan for a while, and when I found out about Keep Newnan Beautiful, I was really excited because I love learning about, local eco-friendly activities and programs. So can you tell us more about what Keep Newnan Beautiful is?
Yeah, so we are a city-funded program, and our primary goal and mission is to educate and inform residents how to motivate and make better decisions for the environment that benefit our community and in the end our earth and our future generations to come. So we work really hard to educate people on how to recycle properly, on what to do with certain types of hard to recycle materials, like things that you have that you can't put in your curbside recycling, or they don't take them at the landfill or the compactor sites for the county. We also work on educating children on water runoff and other big environmental things. So what you do outside and how that affects our water supply. So different things, if you're painting and you don't want to just pour paint into the ground because eventually it gets into the groundwater, or you don't pour it down the storm drain. So things like that. We also talk about community greening and how you can grow bigger gardens or things that you can do at your house to kind of either encourage natural growth or wonderful Georgia plants and things like that, or how to look at doing maybe some organic gardening. Because a lot of times it's easy to run to the pesticides or to the fertilizers, maybe, where some people may want to do something a little bit differently. So we try to provide opportunities for that as well. And then we also talk about, picking up litter. What are ways that you can give back to the community? What's a way that you can help keep your street cleaner, your neighborhood cleaner, or what are things that you can do to reduce your amount of, what you use in your lifestyle and your life, so that less of it goes in the landfill.
Yes, those are all great initiatives and things that I think is really important for people to learn about, because a lot of people just don't know. You think that when you're throwing something away, it's out of sight and out of mind,
Right.
That's just
it just goes to the dump. Nobody cares because you don't see it. So like you said, It's out of sight, out of mind. And there's so many, especially in Georgia, there's so many things that our ancestors and our older generations used to do that were acceptable and were okay because they didn't know any better. Now it's not acceptable to just go stick tires and throw them out in your backyard, right? Mm-hmm. It's not a safe thing. We've learned that those harbor mosquitoes, that they hold water, that there's other chemicals that leach out of them once they start to rot sitting in your yard. So trying to provide opportunities for our residents to clean those things up or to dispose of them in the proper way. And then also trying to educate residents on how to do it properly in the future. So we work really hard. That's my favorite part. That's the thing that I love the most, is teaching kids about how to do things right, or what things they can do differently at home to kind of help out with their families, not make it more difficult. Because, moms and dads and aunts and uncles and grandparents, and we all have lots of stuff going on in our lives. But if we can take one tip and learn a better way to be better environmental stewards, that's ultimately our goal. So
yes. So what types of I think you told me before that you've gone to schools and helped educate them. So how can people maybe have you come to their schools, and what type of programs do you offer?
We have a really neat thing called an Enviroscape, which is essentially a large model that sits on a table, and it has several different types of topography on it, which allows kids to see where the watershed is in in this particular model. But it also kind of explains to them why it's so important what we do outside of our homes in the environment, like how we handle the materials that we use and the things that, activities that we do, how we handle that outside, because all of that eventually gets to the same water source. There's a very limited amount of natural water source that's fresh in our environment and on our earth. And so it's always constantly recycled with the water cycle, right? Mm-hmm. So the being able to show them what happens when you put fertilizer on the ground, or when cows poop. That's always the most exciting one for them, because there's a little farm section. We live in Coweta County, so there's cows here, and cow manure certainly is, has an impact. Deers, that, animals go to the bathroom outside. So all of those different things definitely play and have an effect in our environment, especially when it rains. This Enviroscape, which is a watershed model, like I talked about, gives us the opportunity for the kids to put fertilizer on a golf course, for example, or they get to make the cows go to the bathroom with chocolate sprinkles, or they get to drive trucks that have trash in the back of their pickups. A lot of times we have people that litter, not intentionally, but it flies out of the back of a truck because they didn't know any better, or they didn't realize or think about it or whatever. So the kids get to actually do this on this model, and then they make it rain, or they make the truck drive and things blow out. And then we talk about what happens, and giving them that opportunity to look at it is quite, I think it's important, and it helps them remember, oh gosh, we don't want to do that. Let's put the bag of trash inside of grandma's pickup truck or whatever, or let's make sure that we dispose of our paint properly and we don't, dump it down the storm drain or whatever. So we have lots of those conversations. That's one of my favorite lessons to teach. We typically offer that for kids, I would say 2nd grade to 6th grade. So we've got activities that we can offer from little bitties and, that are in kindergarten that want to talk about Earth Day, and they want to sort the recycling and see what they can actually put in this bin, and what's plastic and what's metal and what's paper. And then we also, in the older classes, are able to go through, and the kids can make a watershed. So there's lots of different levels. I've certainly got information that I can supply to anybody that's interested. We go to schools. I've been to daycares for like summer programs with some of the older students. We do private schools and public schools. We try to focus mainly on City of Newnan schools, because that's kind of our central focus, since we are a city funded program, but we're happy to assist and help with a lot of our other residents and groups, because the goal is to educate so that we can all do better and be better and have a wonderful, clean community. So
yes, it's so important to educate children on this when they're young, because they develop good habits as they're growing. And kind of like you mentioned earlier, they can be like a representative in their own home, kind of inspire their parents to make better choices. Be like, well, I learned in school today that we should do it like this,
Right.
And, so they're even teaching their family members too. So it's so important to educate our children. So aside from you going to schools and whatnot, what are some other like ways that people can get involved with Keep Newnan Beautiful?
So we have, we're fortunate that our city council actually nominates 12 lucky volunteers that get to help us on a monthly basis. We have a commission meeting. We meet the fourth Thursday of every month at City Hall, and certainly it's open to the public if people are interested in attending. We just ask that they kind of make a reservation and let me know that they're coming, so I can make sure if there's lunch provided that we can, accommodate that. But there's also, we typically host an event on City Hall property, kind of behind City Hall in the parking lot. We host different recycling events. Like this past week or this past month, we actually just held our tire amnesty event, and we partnered with the county for that, which is wonderful. We received a grant from the Georgia EPD through the Solid Waste Trust Fund, which actually allows us to get rid of all of these tires. We talked about tires earlier with families and how people used to dispose of them in our community in Georgia. And we were able to help lots of residents and farmers and other community members get rid of tires that were either dumped on their property or left from their ancestors, like we talked about, or just randomly had, some big tractor tires in their barn that they had no idea how to dispose of and get rid of. So we were able to provide that at little to no charge for most of our residents for Coweta County, which we've been fortunate enough to do that once a year. We hope that providing these opportunities prevents people from dumping tires randomly, on the side of the road or on somebody else's property. That's our goal, is because it's expensive. Tires are not easy to dispose of and to be taken care of properly. A couple of other events that we provide are paint recycling, paper shredding, and then we've got electronics recycling in April. We try to do an event every month. We probably average, 10 events a year. It depends on the time of year, things like that. But we always accept volunteers. A lot of times we've had Boy Scouts and Girl Scout troops that have come to help us. We've also had people that have needed a couple of extra hours from the high school. We get a lot of great volunteers from our local high school kids that are encouraged to be civic, get some civic involvement, which we really appreciate. And they're fabulous. We've had some great relationships with our Newnan High School ambassadors and the environmental club out at East Coweta, and then we had some honor society students that have come from Northgate. So we've been really, really fortunate to have some great relationships with kids and groups that are willing to come and help us. Another way that people can get involved is we have an Adopt a Street program, and we're actually we're looking for new volunteers for that and new groups. We've got several businesses that help us with picking up litter on a road that's near their office, which is great. We provide, as a program, Keep Newnan Beautiful provides grabbers, trash grabbers, gloves, garbage bags. And then also we assist with picking up the garbage when they're finished. So we just ask that those groups, Grenzabach is one that has helped us in the past. We work a lot with Anderson and Associates has a street that they pick up for us. Walden Financial, we've got Newnan Times Herald just signed up for one in downtown, which is great. So we've got some really great, wonderful new groups that are helping us keep our city clean. Because let's face it, it's a problem we all have to look at and deal with. Yeah. And the more that we can chip in and assist our, not only our public works department, because certainly they do a great job of keeping our city clean, but just, again, encouraging people to be good stewards helps us all in the end, right? And it saves tax dollars possibly and many other things. So So you've got that with the Adopt a Street program. We added, recently, we've added another small kind of cleanup litter pickup program called a Clean Team. So if you don't want to commit to doing a street 4 times a year, but you want to hold a litter pickup, or you know of a place in your community that is dirty and, you know, maybe there's a ton of water that's come through there or stuff where people have littered a bunch, we're happy to help you facilitate with that as well. Again, we're happy to provide gloves, grabbers, trash bags. Another thing that we do is we have several, I say several, but we have some gardens and other like spaces that we maintain and have beautified in the past.
Yeah.
So we've got a community garden that's off of Spring Street at the corner of Spring and Wheat. It's a little bitty 900, I think it might be 900 square feet if I'm lucky. So we have planted muscadine vines there, and we've got some apple trees and a plum tree and some blueberry bushes. And that area needs lots of attention. We've added some vegetable gardens during the summertime. We try to grow tomatoes and things like that. As a one-woman show, it's hard for me to keep up with all of that. So I rely a lot on my volunteers to help out for that as well. So if you've got a green thumb, I would love to have you help us, because that would be a huge gift to be able to give back to the community. And those muscadines were amazing this past season. And we had several people stop in and pick them up, which was pretty fun. We also have another garden off of right behind West Georgia, off of Carmichael Street at 14 Carmichael. It's our pollinator garden, but it's also becoming very popular as the outdoor classroom. It was something we did, and with, you know, co-sponsorship with Niagara Bottling. They were a huge part of getting our outdoor classroom built, and it just needs some love.
Yeah, there's so many great options that you just listed. You know, I'm a gardener, so I'm super interested in helping with, you know, some of your green space things. And then too, you know, having the recycling events is super amazing. Like the electronics event last year, I know was really successful. I've already have a little bag of things I'm saving up for this year.
Good. It's one of our, you know, it's funny. I've had 4 phone calls, I think, in just 2 days on electronics, which, you know, it's the things you don't think about, like the cords and the cables and all those things with your phone that you're like, what do I do with this? I got a new iPhone, it doesn't fit. And so if you don't recycle it, then they go to the landfill and they just sit for eternity at this point, right? So providing that opportunity as a free thing is what we really, you know, that's always my goal. If I can provide it for free, that's always what I want to do, because more people will be more likely to do it. So when we do take electronics, we can take anything except for small appliances or kitchen appliances. We don't bring me your broken vacuum cleaners. I don't want your broken fans, because people call, and I appreciate that. But they could certainly cut the cords off and bring us the cords, because they're, you know, the goal with electronics, some people will go through and say that they're going to refurbish them and redo them. But a lot of times technology is so far advanced from where some of these materials are, they can't. When you recycle those, the companies that take them apart and they want the valuable pieces that are inside of it. And when you go for that, you're preventing other people from having to go through and mine or create the new materials. So you're actually reducing carbon emissions, because you're not having to make the stuff from scratch. They can actually recycle and reuse those items much easier and with less energy than they do having to get it fresh from the ground, so to speak. And then in some cases you can't even get, like cadmium, I'm probably saying that wrong, but there's several different very, you know, precious metals that are in certain things that are hard to find these days. So it really does make a difference. It seems like such an easy or silly thing, I think, to some people, but it really is making a difference in the carbon footprint of humans on Earth. And it's an easy way, and it's not expensive. You got to get rid of it anyway, right? So bring it to us and let us help you do that.
Well, while we're on the topic of recycling, let's talk more about like local recycling, because I know that there's a lot of myths and misconceptions when it comes to things that can be recycled and how things should be recycled. So can you just talk about some of the top misconceptions that, you know, that are around recycling, and then maybe some local recycling tips?
Sure. So, oh gosh, there's so many misconceptions. First of all, we always have those people who go, I recycle everything. And I get a little nervous when I hear that, because a lot of times I think very well-intended people recycle everything with the assumption that everything that goes in your your curbside recycling, for example, because we have curbside within the city limits, they'll put everything that's plastic in there because it's plastic, and they think that you can recycle plastic, and it doesn't matter if it's a hose or if it's your water bottle, or if it's part of the plastic case on your phone that you don't need anymore because it's plastic. And so I think it's very important to make sure that people are very specific and detailed when it comes to recycling. I think as a community and really as a nation, we got super lazy about it. And that's really what's put a lot of our recycling industry into kind of a tailspin at different times. Just because it's plastic doesn't mean it can go in your recycling bin. I was super guilty of always putting those berry containers, the little clamshell berry containers. I was recycling those because they're PET, and that's a number that we recycle. Inevitably, I think we unintentionally contaminate the loads and contaminate the recycling, so it's unable to be used in the way that we would want it to be used, or that I think is intended when we discuss recycling. So I think that's one of the misconceptions, that you can recycle everything. So I think that's important. Make sure, if you're not sure what you can recycle, reach out to somebody in your community where you take your recycling. I think that's important. I hope to always be that voice and that that person with that extra information, so you don't have to keep it all stored up here and you don't have to get on Google 18 times. But what we recycle here through our community is not going to be the same as what we recycle in Troup County or in New York. Like, I have had some great residents that have moved from New York or California, and what they could recycle up there, they made the assumption they could do that here, and they can't. So I think it's important to realize that you cannot recycle everything everywhere. And it's a shame that it's like that, but it just is. I think the other thing is, and I've heard a lot of this lately, is that everything in the recycle bin goes to the garbage. That's not always the case. Unfortunately, I think in some cases it is. I think it's a problem. I think during COVID, when we had there were a lot of absences, we had some delays with our service, and every community across the state and the nation, I think, we're going through this as well. Certainly, I think there were times that it probably all got commingled, and we were just grateful for them to pick up our trash.
Yeah.
When you're a week behind on trash service and you've got 40,000 residents that are unhappy because they've got garbage in their cans, you just have to do what you have to do. And so certainly there were some moments, I think, during that process where we had a few hiccups. But from what we understand, and from talking to our partners at Public Works, and then also at GFL, the recycling trucks are back rolling. They're back doing what they're supposed to be doing, and they want us to do our part certainly as well. So all recycling does not go to the landfill, like some people like to say that, but there are certain things that you can do to keep it out of the garbage. There's certainly a lot of contamination that occurs. And if you throw, for example, a plastic garden hose in your recycle bin because it's plastic, you've just contaminated the load. Like, you have now made it a problem for that particular truck of recycling to go and be recycled properly. Another misconception, I think, is pizza boxes. This is a random one to talk about, and we can certainly talk about this, but I think everybody assumes that just because it's cardboard, that it can be recycled. If it's got grease, if it's got cheese, if it's got that leftover paper from the pizza place that's in there, and you just throw that in the recycle bin because it won't be a big deal because they're just going to recycle it anyway. Don't do that. You can't. It's contaminated. They don't want that. They don't want the pizza. Some of those, I think, are probably our biggest misconceptions. I think the other thing is, I think a lot of times people think there's not an industry for it, and that's completely inaccurate. We actually, in Georgia, have one of the largest industries for recycling materials, or remaking materials, like cardboard and other things, into new cardboard or new containers and things like that. There's 15 different companies in the state of Georgia that actually use recycled paper and recycled cardboard. So it's very important that we recycle that. There's 3 different companies, and probably more at this point that I can think of, that recycle glass. And one of them is Strategic. They're out of Forest Park, and they actually have to go out of state because they don't get enough glass recycling.
Wow.
They don't get enough glass materials to accommodate the orders that they have for new product that they make out of old products. So, there's many different businesses that rely on recycled materials, and using recycled materials saves, like we were talking earlier, it saves emissions, it saves expense. There's so many different ways that it benefits the environment by just reusing something that they've already made from original material, and not having to reformulate it and make it all brand new again. it really makes a huge difference. So, definitely recycle whenever you can, because we have industries that are begging for it, and that need it desperately. Local recycling. So we've been working with our program really hard. We had a couple of hiccups. We couldn't get into the schools as much, obviously, during COVID. And then also speaking in groups, unless it's been on Zoom, has been a little bit limited, though that's opening up again, which is wonderful. But trying to figure out how to communicate correctly what to recycle in our, curbside recycling for the city has been a huge, it's been a learning curve for me, no pun intended. But I think that that finding the right way to communicate the right things, that we get the information we get from our hauler, which, when we use materials, currently our trash hauler, who's GFL, picks it up. Then from there, they take it back to their facility and then combine it all and send it to the MRF, which is the material recycling facility. The group that they use is Pratt, which is out of Conyers. They're in the Conyers area over there. And the things that Pratt wants to take, I think is what we really need to be marketing to our residents. Like I've been putting out there in ads a lot. We've had it on social media, and we've had it actually in the paper as well. And I think it's been interesting because I've gotten some great comments from residents that maybe didn't realize that you don't put glass in our recycling bins anymore. The city has not taken glass in their recycling, in our recycling bins for the curbside. It's been 10 years.
Wow.
And there's still residents that are still putting their glass in that recycling bin. But so locally here, if you live inside the city limits of Newnan, you can recycle plastic, aluminum, cardboard, and paper. And you want to be really intentional on the type of plastic, I feel like. I never really focused on that before when I would talk to groups in schools and kids and things like that. But from what I'm hearing is that most companies want jugs, jars, and bottles that are plastic because of a lot of times their equipment in those material recycling facilities is not up to date with the new packaging that we have here in our community. So like those clamshells for berries and things that are new shape sizes, those are not able to go through the current MRF that we have. So a lot of times those get put to the side, not because they can't be recycled, but because their specific facility that our trash hauler uses can't recycle them. So I think that's an important factor that I never, or that I didn't think about when I first started this job a couple of years back, because I wasn't aware of it. So trying to provide very specific recycling is important. The other thing is that you can recycle glass, but you cannot do it in your curbside. So we are fortunate that Coweta County has, I think, 10 or 12 compactor sites throughout the county. But you can go and take your glass there. And then the other thing that I think is important is we always forget, or I do, we talked about the bigger things that can't go through the equipment. I think it's imperative to realize that you can't put some of those other smaller things through the equipment as well. So like lids, if you do recycle your lids, which you can do in our thing on our curbside containers, smash your containers up, your plastic jars if you can, or your bottles, get the air out of them, and then screw the lid back on so that it doesn't get lost in the process. And then that way that plastic can be recycled as well. I think the other big thing is don't bag your recycling. Do not put your recycling in a bag in your container on the curb. Yes. Because when those guys come through in those trucks, they could care less if they're in a bag. And they're going to throw that bag and everything else. And then that bag becomes a problem when it gets to the MRF, and it gets stuck in all of the mechanisms and the wheels and all the things. And so it actually can cause some problems when it gets to the facility to be processed. So it's important to not bag your recycling, which it's going to take a lot of learning for some people, because it's so much easier to throw a bag in that has all your plastic in it versus having to dump it all out. But try and remember that you don't recycle those plastic bags in your curbside. So jugs, jars, bottles for plastic, you can screw the lids back on for sure. Aluminum cans, cans for food, drink cans, those things for sure. Do your best to make sure they're empty, in the sense that don't leave a bunch of green beans in the bottom of a can when you throw it in your recycle bin, because that's gross, first of all. And second of all, it's not good for recycling. It's contaminating it. So don't do that. Paper's good. You can, I would encourage you obviously not to put personal papers in there, but certainly your cardboard boxes from your cereal boxes, you can condense those down, and, paper bags, things like that are clean and free from grease or food waste is important. So you could put those in there too.
Yes. Those are great tips. And I just want to re-emphasize that Coweta County does have the compactor sites where you can recycle things, because I live in an apartment and we don't have recycling. So every like 2 weeks, I pack up my car, take all my cardboard and my plastics, my glass, aluminum cans, and go down to Selt Road and just, spend like 5-10 minutes dumping everything. And I feel so good about myself. I'm like, I am doing my part.
I know, me too. Well, that's where I end up taking mine there too, because we live out in the county as well. And I think people just don't realize that that's an opportunity that doesn't cost you anything.
Mm-hmm.
It's just a little bit of time to get over there and take it. And it reduces what you've got to actually throw out, which does make a difference in the long run. So.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. Well, thank you so much, Paige, for coming on and sharing all of these amazing tips. Please reach out to Paige for any volunteer opportunities, to learn more about the recycling events that are coming up, and just to get involved however you can. So until next week, let's continue to make better choices for the health of our planet and the health of our bodies. Thanks for listening. Become a volunteer at New Leaf Community Garden in downtown Newnan. Located at 32 Southbide Avenue, our purpose is to educate, feed, and nourish the people of Newnan through a sustainable community garden. We always welcome extra hands in the garden and can accommodate volunteer group projects. We also have raised beds available for lease for beginner and experienced gardeners. Join us on most Saturdays between 10 a.m. and 12 p.m. at 32 Southbide Avenue, or visit our New Leaf Community Garden Facebook page to learn more.